One of the best-loved sports cars in the world, the MGB sold over 500,000 copies, winning the hearts of 2 decades of enthusiasts. With bulletproof mechanics, modern performance and sheer affordability, it's got to be the nearest thing you'll get to a sensible classic car.
I think its appeal lies in the fact that, first of all, it's a classic English car. It's a very nice car to look at and a very good example of English design at its best. Secondly, it's a lovely car to drive. I always drive with the top down, except when members of my family are with me who insist that it's up, but when I'm alone, I have the top down, and it's the nearest thing to sailing that you can get. You know, you can feel the wind in your face, and when you get off a motorway and away from the fumes and out in the countryside, oh, it's just a lovely car, winter or summer. When I was captured, my car was left in the garage. That's the MGB you can see. And I'd been driving the night before in snow, and I parked it in the garage, put the handbrake on, and went away, intending to be away for about 5 or 6 days. And of course, when I came back, the brakes had seized up, and underneath the bodywork was in pretty poor order. To my great surprise and delight, members of the MG Club came to my assistance and took the car and actually put it together again for me. They fixed it up in this marvellous condition that you can now see it.
But there are MGBs and MGBs, and there's a structured hierarchy of price and desirability between the models. Among the most expensive are cars like this '67 Roadster, held in fierce esteem for their traditional press disc wheels, chrome bumpers, and nostalgic slatted MG grille. They're the Bs that everybody lusts after. £8,000 to £10,000 buys a mint early car like this, complete with nautical-sized steering wheel and dinky leather seats. And before the dark days of British Leyland, MGs wore their octagons with pride. Launched in 1965, the MGB GT was known as the poor man's Aston Martin, a compliment to its finely proportioned Farina-styled tin top. Dubbed a 2+2, the rear seat was really only for those prepared to travel everywhere in the Lotus position. GTs fetch £1,000 to £1,500 less than Roadsters, but you'd still need around £6,000 for this very pucker example. The process of Leylandisation began in late 1969 with the Mark III model, and for the MGB purist, this was the beginning of the end. Plastic and cloth seats appeared instead of leather, plastic front grills, row-style wheels instead of wires, and those cattle brand BL badges appeared on the front wings. As a cheaper alternative to an early model, Mark IIIs make good buying sense. Presentable cars start at £3,000, and despite those dubious cosmetic embellishments, they're as much fun to drive as the original, something which can't, unfortunately, be said for their successors. 1974 was a bad year for the B. Rubber bumpers and higher ride height were demanded by the American market, and Leyland's idea of a trendy interior didn't help either. The thing now literally weighed a ton, was slow, ugly, and handled like a wayward supermarket trolley. Age, though, has mellowed the rubber bumper models, and at the moment they represent the cheapest entry into MGB ownership. Don't get carried away and pay fortunes, though. £1,500 buys something with an MOT, all the way up to £6,000 territory for a real cracker. Before you part with any money, beware valuation certificates which are based solely on a photograph. As far as I'm concerned, to value a second-hand car without physically inspecting it first on a ramp seems like a recipe for disaster. Take this very superficially tidy V-registration Roadster. Looks good on top, but if we whip this wing off, you could see where it's starting to go. If we look at the inner wing strengthener here, some good rust here, that'll have to be replaced. Bottom of the front wing, just where it joins the sill, again, that's going. And this outer sill looks superficially sound, but underneath it runs the castle section. Now, if that's badly rusted, it can affect the torsional rigidity of the shell and will cost about £300 per side to replace. And prod the rear spring hangers, another favourite for the MOT man. Mechanically, the MGB is one of the most reliable classics I know. Noisy tappets shouldn't be a cause for concern. A clonking as you accelerate is more likely to be prop shaft or back axle, rather than any serious gearbox nasties. Perhaps the most reassuring thing about owning an MGB is the amazing parts availability. There's an entire multi-million-pound industry solely devoted to the car. At places like this, you can buy everything from a brand new body shell to an uprated handling kit, or a spare ignition key or hood fastener. And it's all off the shelf. Would that all other classic cars were so well served. Most bits are now in production again, and price-wise, you won't need friends at Fort Knox.
Well, for instance, a distributor cap will cost you less than £4, a rear shock absorber, £10 or £11, an exhaust system less than £60. The cars are so much cheaper to run and maintain than any modern car you care to mention.
If you've got the desirable overdrive option fitted, 27 miles per gallon is a legitimate expectation, and you can even convert it to lead-free petrol. Insurance on a classic car policy with a limited mileage is laughably cheap. For a 25-year-old with a clean licence doing 5,000 miles a year, fully comprehensive weighs in at just £210. Try that on a hot hatch. Top of the MGB ladder in performance terms comes the MGC and the V8, the B's muscular brothers. And if you think four-cylinder MGB performance might be a little bit tame, it's time you had a run in one of these. Distinguished by wider 15-inch wheels and a macho bonnet bulge, the C with its lazy straight-six 3-litre engine makes a lusty motorway cruiser, good for 120 miles an hour. Although some reckon the handling isn't up to scratch, it's a full force machine and better than some armchair pundits would have you believe. Expect to pay £14,000 for a really stunning car like this. I'd spend my money on the V8. Shoehorned under the bonnet nestles Rover's accomplished 3.5-litre engine. Quick, poised and completely fuss-free, 60 comes up in around 8 seconds. Slingshot performance with total tractability. £8 should secure an original low-mileage car like this, but beware, they're addictive. And to prove just how affordable MGBs are and that we're not talking flannel, we found this very tidy 73 GT for sale locally at just 3,100 quid. As the salesman said to the punter, "You can't say fairer than that, Squire."